Oh, okay, Dipti, the floor is yours.
Then I can welcome our guests after I read this very long letter.
Okay.
So committee, commission, chair language. Pursuant to recently adopted amendments to the Illinois Open Meetings Act included in Public Act 101-0640, public bodies may, in certain circumstances, hold entirely virtual public meetings without a quorum physically present in any one location. On March 17, 2020, Village President Lawrence R. Levine issued a declaration of emergency pursuant to the authority granted by the Village Code, the Illinois Municipal Code, and the Illinois Emergency Management Agency Act to address the health threat posed by the COVID-19 pandemic. On June 15, 2020, President Levine executed a written determination that given the ongoing emergency associated with the COVID-19 pandemic, in-person meetings of the Board of Trustees are not practical or prudent. On January 8, 2021, Governor Pritzker issued his most recent disaster proclamation and executive order 2021-01 that declared in-person attendance at public meetings of more than 10 people at the regular public meeting location to be infeasible in accordance the Open Meetings Act as amended by Public Act 101-0640. In accordance with the governor's disaster proclamation, Village President Levine's declaration of emergency, and President Levine's determination regarding meetings of the Board of Trustees, Village President Levine has also determined that in-person meetings of the Community Relations Forum are not practical or prudent at this time and until further notice. Accordingly, this meeting of the Community Relations Forum is being conducted virtually with members participating through the Zoom webinar platform. Assistant Village Manager Sharon Tanner is in the conference room as required by the Open Meetings Act. Wonderful. Whew, that was a, so do we have Reverend Gary? And I see Hillary. Do we have Reverend Gary yet?
I don't see him.
I know he was studying, but usually would join. What do you say? Should we get started, Sharon?
Probably. We've got a pretty full agenda tonight.
Okay. So before we kick off our meeting, I just wanted to bring up something on this forum. Happy New Year for those who celebrate Chinese New Year. It's the year of the ox, which is apparently hard work, strength, and reliability. I did not know that. It has been a rough year for our Asian friends and for me, family. And I feel like with the pandemic and what we have heard in the news, it has been really difficult to understand why people take the actions that they do. But as you guys are already aware, there have been some really bad news that we have heard about abuse towards the Asian Americans, especially the elderly, which I just completely do not understand. So I just wanted to make sure as a community in Glencoe, you know, we are standing together, we are respecting each other, and, you know, check in on your Asian friends, family, make sure they're okay. And take that extra step, maybe stand up for them if you're witness to any sort of abuse. I know I certainly would. And I have to tell you, after 9/11, I faced this myself, and it was just not a really good, you don't understand it. I never understood why I had to face that. You know, it had like no connection. So I'm sure I can see what the Asian friends are thinking. So I just wanted to say here, you know, let's continue to respect each other in our community. We really are a very mature community in Glencoe, and you know, our allyship towards each other is critical at this point. So that's my 2 cents for today. And then I would like to jump into our special guests today, Barney Gallagher and team. Barney is our chair for the Sustainability Task Force, and he and his team our special guests because they are here to tell us all the great work and the initiatives that the Sustainability Task Force is doing in our community in Glencoe, and also introduce to us the Eco District framework, which I have had the chance to look at and talk to Barney a little bit about. He has explained it to me, and I just thought it was a wonderful, wonderful idea. And our forum plays a very important role in that. So I really wanted everyone to see it. So we were able to get Barney on in our meeting. And with that, Barney, the floor is all yours.
Well, thank you, Dippy. Thanks for inviting us. I'm joined by Dudley Onerdonk, who is on the task force as well as on the Park District Plan Commissions, and Pete Mulvaney, who is on the Board of Trustees and also on the sustainability. He's the vice chair of the Sustainability Task Force. Let me share screen if I can and get this document up. Oop. Is that shown? Can you see that?
Not yet, not yet, Barney.
Uh-oh. Let's see. Let's escape and come back and share. I guess I need to have it open. That's not it. Oh, Jesus. Sorry. I am having some technical difficulties here.
Barney, if you want, I can give it a try here at least until 5:30.
Why don't you go ahead and do that, Pete? I'm not used to doing this. So
Sure.
It's amateur hour in the Gallagher house.
No problem. You're not alone in having issues with that. How is this, folks? Is this something you can see?
Yeah, I can see it. That's
Okay. So Barney, back to you.
okay. If we can just go back down to the next slide. Just a little bit about the Sustainability Task Force. We're going to spend 99% of the discussion on the Eco District protocol and concept, but did want to give you just a general background on the Sustainability Task Force and what we're doing. We are a 12 volunteer member group. We do have official representatives from the village, the library, the Park District Board of Trustees, and the District 35 Board of Education, and the balance are members at large. We have some student membership, and we are looking at extending our membership possibly in the months to come. Our vision is to make Glencoe the most sustainable village in the universe. Let's shoot big. Don't be modest. Go for the big goals. We have recently broken into some sub-working groups focused on sustainable business practices, recycling and waste, green lawns, green landscaping, ravines and tree canopy, water use, protection, and conservation, carbon reduction, and perhaps most importantly, public awareness. I think we all of us working for these various task forces and groups in the community find that public awareness is probably one of our biggest challenges. How do we get the word out to the community on activities coming up, things we're doing, concepts, and we have dedicated a terrific group of folks who are working in that area now and have come up with some pretty good strategies to hopefully increase our visibility. Some of our recent activities and key activities include the village-wide donation recycling event that we had earlier this year. Perhaps you saw it. We backed up traffic on Green Bay Road and frustrated some people because we had so many people coming that we ran out of capacity. We had to turn down some materials because we didn't have enough truck capacity. We will be having another one of those coming up in the spring. We also have the active transportation plan that was developed a couple of years ago and is in the implementation phase now, which really addresses making transportation, particularly by bike and on foot, safe and available to a wide range of people in the community. We've supported the new water meter rolled out, the community solar program, which is new, and numerous educational programs at the Glencoe Public Library. So that's who we are. And now I'd like to turn it over to Dudley, who like to talk a little bit about planning. So Dudley, it's all yours.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Great. Okay. Well, comprehensive planning. A comprehensive plan is an officially adopted public document which establishes long-range policies, excuse me, policies to guide the village's unified and coordinated development. It's comprehensive in the sense that it covers the whole village and deals with the essential physical and social factors that shape our community and promotes the interests of the community at large rather than individual or special groups. Glencoe's 20th century comprehensive plan was a long-range, top-down comprehensive statement of policy, which focused on the physical development of the village. The plan was divided into specific independent elements such as land use, infrastructure, and transportation that addressed different subject matters. The village board was the principal client of the plan. The plan had some citizen input, but was primarily a technical document. Times have changed. In the 21st century, spurred by societal trends, comprehensive plans should now include an emphasis on community engagement, a broadening of concerns to include social and environmental issues, health and well-being, as well as attention to plan implementation. Concepts such as climate change, inequality, equity, and sustainability are now central to the comprehensive plan. Modern comprehensive plans should also address the process, structure, and scope of the plan itself. So we're seeing a shift in emphasis from physical place, to the people who live in the place. They have community values as expressed by the community through citizen participation, collaboration, a process to meaningfully engage all community stakeholders, a systems approach organized into cross-cutting themes rather than separate elements. So when we talk about mobility, we're talking about all kinds of mobility, not just driving cars. And then systems recognizes that everything is connected. We also need to link our process to our values. Linking process and outcomes to values that clearly define an action agenda. These include items such as safety, prosperity, and inclusiveness. We, of course, are part of a larger whole. There are some issues that we should talk about that are regional in scope, whether it's Lake Michigan or regional transportation. Natural systems like the Skokie River, which should be protected. So in our area are some of the transportation systems that are regional, our railroad, the interstates, even Green Bay Trail touches several communities and connect us to other places. There are opportunities for intergovernmental cooperation and shared services. They should be explored. There are cultural and educational institutions that transcend the municipal boundaries, such as New Trier, the Botanic Garden, Writers Theater. All these groups enrich our lives. There are a few very good models of this new approach. There is one that's quite promising. It's called the Eco District Protocol, a collaboration framework for a new century sustainable comprehensive plan. While traditional planning focuses on developing the built environment, eco-district planning focuses on both the physical environment and the community's social and cultural networks where people work together to improve their quality of life. I'll be available for questions afterwards. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Dudley. This is Pete. What I'd like to do is, or is this me or you, Dudley?
You.
I'm sorry, you're on.
Okay, I'm on. So, Dudley, thanks for that. And, you know, I really do appreciate how you describe the history of planning and shifting from a focus on from place to people. I think that's really critical, and it's one of the reasons why I think this discussion here tonight with you guys at the Community Relations Forum is so important. And before I go on, I'll get into some detail about the eco district, but you know, Dudley said he'll take questions afterwards, but if there are thoughts or comments now for clarity purposes before we move into eco district, maybe we can take a moment to do that if anybody on the Community Relations Forum needs any clarifications.
I do have a question. In one of your first couple slides, you showed representation from some of the other forums in our community, and I think it was the next one, or maybe Barney spoke to it. So I just wanted to see, like, if the Community Relations Forum could also be represented in some way as part of this task force.
Well,
Or maybe I'm running ahead of everything.
I think you're a bit ahead. Let's run through it, and I think it'll become clear what we're talking about as we go through the presentation. But yes, definitely not part of this task force, because the task force is just, we're positive, we're championing this. It's a bigger thing than STF. It's really more of the Plan Commission and the community at large. But we do want to get your input would be incredibly invaluable to the planning process.
Okay, sorry, didn't mean to go ahead.
No, that's great. A dialogue is perfect. We don't have to follow the script here. But I do want to emphasize, if you're asking about participation in the Sustainability Task Force, we are open and welcome to any and all who want to participate. So I would love it if all of you showed up to all of our Sustainability Task Force meetings. That would be a great success.
Better said, Peter.
Well said. So why is the eco district approach important? And I think Barney touched on many of these items here, but it's a framework, right, to collectively impact mutual goals. And these mutual goals in this process are agreed to mutual goals, not established by a centralized organization, but really try to build consensus around what our goals and our future is for Glencoe. So the Eco District Framework provides a framework by which to gather community and work through the processes of understanding and defining and achieving specific goals for your community. It is holistic and iterative, so it is not a type of system, if any of you are familiar with systems like the Green Building Council, which is very prescriptive, where you have a point system and you do these specific activities to earn a certain amount of points to get your gold star or your red star, your green star. This framework that we chose, Eco District, one reason we chose it is that it provides a great deal of flexibility, and it allows the community to define what success really looks like, and that can change over time. We're not necessarily establishing this one time, in this moment in time, and saying, hey, this is our goal for the future. It's more of a process, and one that allows and encourages iteration. Right. So there are three key elements to imperatives to the plan, which I'm going to get to on the next slide. But here you can see it touches on resilience, climate, and equity. There are also, in terms of an iterative planning process, benefits are what I like to call stacked benefits. So doing one, making a decision, a policy decision in one area ought to, and almost always does, affect another. And we want to make sure that we have stacked benefits. In other words, that our decisions are working towards a common goal for multiple benefits, shifting away from a singularity mindset. And as I mentioned, the goals that we establish are self-defined in this process, and the metrics, we can establish them ourselves as we develop our eco district plan. And by the way, it's probably not clear, but we have not necessarily agreed to move forward on this. the intention of our coming to you guys tonight and other organizations, as well as the village board, is to inform the community about this tool that is available to us. It so happens Dudley and I are both accredited professionals in this eco-district business. And but we are not advocating necessarily, we are simply trying to inform people to see if this is a path that Glencoe residents would like to embark upon, would like to adopt in some way. And so this is just the beginning step. I don't mean to imply that we are doing this now, or that we are necessarily going to do this. But I'm hopeful that tonight we can stimulate some dialogue and get more educated, begin the education process around what it means to pursue an eco-district planning process. So I mentioned there were 3 imperatives to the eco-district, and there they are at the top of the screen: equity, resilience, and climate protection. These are the fundamental core principles around which the eco-district planning process tries to address. I suspect that you guys have had conversations around equity and what that means, and so that's fantastic. We can adopt what you guys have been thinking about in terms of equity and bring that into the fold of an eco-district planning process. The point being, this is a process that allows equity to fold into our village planning processes. Resilience is a term that's often heard with respect to climate, and I suspect many of you have read, if not actively been engaged in climate resilience activities, things like preparing for flood mitigation and that sort of thing. But resilience is broader than that, and eco-district takes a broad perspective on resilience. It's resilience of the community. It's shocks to social change. It's how does your village respond to anything from financial disruption? How resilient are you if there's economic disruption, storm events, snow events, right? How well do we perform when we are under duress? That's the notion of resilience. It can even be stretched to notions of cybersecurity. Are we secure from a cyber perspective? And I know you've all seen in the news lately in Glencoe, there's been a fair bit of cyber theft and identity theft here in Glencoe. And then finally, the third imperative is notions of climate change. Climate change is, essentially comes down to a notion of managing carbon. What do we do to mitigate the impacts of climate change? And I think there's a quick definition I'd like to emphasize. Resilience is, in some respects, how we respond to changes in climate, whereas this climate protection notion is, what are we doing to reduce the risk that climate change occurs? In other words, how are we reducing our carbon emissions? Okay, so those are the 3 imperatives that would get rolled into a planning process under eco-district. I'm not going to go into much more detail here other than to show what's obvious, that there are 6 priorities. And one of them is place. And as Dudley mentioned, place is it's a core fundamental tenet of planning for urban planning. We've got to know what the place is. And the orientation here is, how do we get full inclusion and engagement within a place? How do you design your place to be inclusive? Right? How do you design a place that reflects and represents your culture? Other priorities might be like health and well-being. Something you don't often see in an urban planning perspective is, how do we integrate the notions of health and well-being into planning, right? Safety, food systems, think really broad, really holistic in terms of what priorities do we want to put in place in our planning processes. The others I think are interesting as well: living infrastructure, the notion of tree canopy, resource regeneration, real simple: air, water, and waste. What could be more important or fundamental than that? Why aren't we, or are we should question, are we really planning for the preservation, sustainability of our air, our water, and our waste? So 6 priorities, some of which are pretty traditional in terms of planning processes. Others are a little more avant-garde, a little newer. But I think the time is perfect for a framework like this, where we have this more perhaps than many other times in our history. We have this intersection of social issues, environmental issues, changing climate, right, driving a lot of broad economic and social change. So this framework, Eco District, is, I think, a good way to begin this process of exploring with our community what we want to be in the future. The takeaway here real fast, hopefully we've made these points clear. One, it's a planning tool, right? Two, we are, the first step is to make some kind of commitment to explore this. And you've done that by granting us, and thank you, by the way, granting us time on your agenda to have this discussion. So we need to, I think anyways, engage the community in some exploration. And then the third takeaway is that smart planning, be it Eco District or some other framework, saves money ultimately. It creates more equitable and resilient community. And there are benefits to all with an improved planet. Our ask here for you tonight is, number one, a willingness to participate in this dialogue. And Dipti, thank you. I think I got the notion that since you asked if you can join us, yes, so a willingness to participate, I suspect, will be there with this group. And again, explore the Eco District paradigm. We will have information. If we haven't sent it in advance, we have a couple of different documents that we request you please review. And then finally, as this dialogue evolves over who knows how long, we ask that you participate and engage. With that, I think that was our formal presentation, and I need to check the time because at 5:30 I turn into a pumpkin and I got to jump in my car.
You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, and so that would be wonderful to have some dialogue. What I'm going to do is switch over to my telephone and continue the conversation with you via telephone. But I will leave this slide deck up and open.
So this framework, is this something that you've put together that's specific to Glencoe, or is this something that is a very generic, any eco district or any town that wants to apply this to them? This is like a generic framework and we're just using it.
That's right. I'll take that one, guys. So there's an organization that has prepared this framework and developed tools to allow these types of dialogues. This particular PowerPoint is our own, but there's we would be adopting this framework from an organization which has applied this Eco District certification to other communities. So we would be one of, we would be joining that association, if you will. Dipti, is that what you were asking?
Yes, I just wanted to see if this was standard or is this something that's specifically for Glencoe?
It's standard in the sense that it's the framework, but it becomes very Glencoe-centric because of the nature of this organization. We are allowed to define our path as long as we address those imperatives, think about those priorities, we can set the goals. So it becomes very customized to Glencoe, but we're using a framework which has been applied globally.
And how do you measure those, the three initiatives that you have up on top? Maybe that's not the right word, but how do you measure that to see, is there a threshold you have to, like, is there something you measure it against? Like, how do you know there's equity here or there's enough resilience?
That's right. Yeah, it's a great question. So equity, what happens as you implement an Eco District framework, we will establish what those goals are. What does equity mean to Glencoe? what does it mean to have an equitable place? And it may be, you know, however we define it, all opportunities are equal for all residents, whatever we define as that notion of what equity means for Glencoe. And then we establish how we are going to build equity into our community. It may be that we change our governance structure. It may be that we look at access to housing. It may be we look at, you know, our task force and say, wait a minute, have we excluded a certain group like students? Are students allowed on your task force? I don't know, but that would be a way to evaluate ourselves and put things in place. And we can say, yes, we have done these activities and we believe these activities equals a more equitable community. That's up to us, not us in the small inclusion, us in the big sense, us in the sense of Glencoe. And as broad as we can make our engagement process, the more likely we will be able to define a solid inclusion base, inclusive base. I'm trying to launch Zooms on my phone. I'm having Barney, I'm having my own technical problem here because I'm going to shift over to my car if you guys don't mind.
Okay.
But I'll be listening. I'll just be dropped for a moment.
Okay.
Very good. Thank you. I'm going to stop sharing. Okay. So that in case you guys need it later.
Okay. Thanks, Pete.
Yep.
Okay.
As a follow-up, if you're interested, I put together a one-page backgrounder called What are Eco Districts? And it talks about the protocol, the implementation phases, and the imperatives. It's going to be distributed or has been distributed to the Plan Commission, I think, for our next meeting. But you know, it's a very new concept. And I've just become aware of it, say, in the last 6 months myself. And I've been in the planning business for a long time. And so perhaps I can share that with you along with the access and the webpage for the Eco District website.
Yeah, if you drill through the Eco District website, there's some examples of other communities' plans and how they've worked, how they put that together. It can be quite extensive. A lot of the communities who've gotten involved with developing the eco districts have set up separate Section C non-for-profit organizations to act as umbrellas. But then these tend to be focusing on larger geographic areas. There are also communities that are more the size of Glencoe that have undertaken the process. So it's adaptable. It can be expanded to a large area, or it can be used in a more defined, much less extensive area such as Glencoe. And as Dudley indicated, you know, it might be that as a part of the process, we may want to bring in the Botanic Garden as a part of the plan, because they are such a important resource to our community. Or, you know, do we? You know, right now we're working with like in the water area and say in the ravines with Lake County people, because they've got a lot more ravines than we do and a lot more money. So we're trying to partner with them to develop plans for our ravines and how to sustain and protect our ravines. So there's a component that reaches outside the community of Glencoe as well.
So how far along are you? Sorry, Amy, I didn't see your hand.
We are at we've met with the library board. We've met with the Plan Commission. Now we've met with you. And we had presented this to the Board of Trustees, I guess late last summer, the concept of eco districts. And the trustees were very receptive to the concept and wanted to explore integration of this into our planning process. We have the last plan was done, Dudley, what, in 86, 96, something like that? 86, I think.
96.
Was it 96? Oh, Bruce, I didn't see you there. Hi. So it's about time for another comprehensive plan exercise. And so we kind of brought this up and said, well, maybe this is something we can fold into or make a part of, or maybe the plan could be the plan process. And the trustees encouraged us to talk to the Plan Commission, talk to yourselves, talk to other organizations in the community to gauge whether or not there's an interest and enthusiasm behind this concept. So that's where we are. We're at the very beginning.
I was just going to quickly ask, are there any of our kind of sister communities on the North Shore that are kind of going along this framework, just that you're aware of, or is this a little different for us?
I don't believe there are any other communities that are actively exploring the eco district per se. There are other frameworks out there that are more prescriptive. They may be looking at how they conduct their plan. Like Dudley said, the plans of the past were more about bricks, mortar, and things. And now the planning is moving more towards, okay, we have these other soft issues that are actually really, really important and need to be a part of that process.
I'll take a stab at that. This is fairly new. I think there's some Pittsburgh area communities have done it. I think there are a couple communities in the Boston area that have done it or presently going through it. If I can talk for a moment about my vision of what urban planning is, it's sort of like a train, and it has a whole bunch of boxcars. And in the early years, it was all about city beautiful and all about city. And then another boxcar got attached to the train, and that was like city efficient. And then other elements came along, and this is what I'll call the city social. So the other stuff doesn't go away. It's just that there are some new other perspectives that we want to add to it, whether that's climate change or resiliency. Some places put a greater emphasis on things like economic development. That's all part of it. That's why it's a comprehensive plan. It can be a bit daunting at the beginning, but how do you eat an element? One bite at a time, right?
I guess I have a question around how you guys define inclusion. I think that what you're doing, what you want to do is wonderful. I do a lot of work in the Englewood community, and one of the things that they struggle with is lead poisoning. And I've been involved with community garden building there and trying to do a lead abatement through like planting sunflowers and different things like that. And then also doing above bed gardens. And I wondered if, part of our objective might extend to adopting, if you will, a less resourced community, on a small scale, and helping them to realize some of the initiatives that we're talking about for Glencoe, which is a very resourced community.
Dudley, you want to take a shot, or Pete?
Well, I mean, it's basically whatever we would like to do. I know for our subcommittee that I'm on concerning water and water quality, lead has come up as an issue, mostly through lead water pipes. And the EPA standards for lead in the water is they don't want to have any lead in the water. It's really especially bad for children. And that is certainly one of the things that if we choose to make that a priority, we can talk to the board about what we can do to reduce lead in the environment. The federal government did that, a few years ago when they, got rid of leaded gasoline. So it's one of the nice things or interesting approaches to eco districts is we get to say what we think is important. I do encourage us to try to make both data and value-driven decisions, not just pull something out of the air, and that there's some evidence behind our recommendations, but certainly lead or overall air quality or any of those other things that we've been talking about are important, and we can address them both individually as a village, and some things we're going to require a regional approach.
No, I think Annis was asking, would part of our plan be an adoption of another community to help resource their needs? And
It could.
it's not something that we've talked about, but I think absolutely. Again, I think the attractive thing about the Eco District protocol is you can pretty much define what you want as the actions that you seem necessary that might, particularly under the equity and inclusion, for our community to do something like that. It makes us more aware and inclusive of another community. I think that's absolutely be on the table.
Mm-hmm. And one of the benefits of this is we can catalog some things that are going now. With respect to equity, I'm thinking of a program we did 2 years ago before the COVID with the Park District, where we partnered with the Waukegan Park District in a swimming program where we taught a number of kids taught a number of kids from Waukegan, from disadvantaged homes, how to swim. And we actually provided the transportation up there to pick them up and bring them down to the beach and give them lunch, and then teach them how to swim. And that's another approach to equity.
And one of the things also that I think Dipti would say, how do you measure? One of the really attractive pieces of the Eco District protocol is they really direct you to set data points and metrics so that you can measure your progress against your goal. It challenges you sometimes, how do you set that metric or data, that metric? But setting a metric as in terms of the level of working with other communities in certain areas where we have some expertise or skills could be something you would include as a metric, and then measure your progress against how are you doing against that? Because it's an iterative process. You come back every couple of years and measure your progress against the goals you've established.
I think we'll certainly encourage you to go to the website, ecodistricts.org, and take a look at some of the examples. Some of them are districts within cities, some of them are small communities, and you can see how each group addressed those things that they thought were important, and that'd be, I think, helpful.
It's a very subjective matter, right? So that's kind of what we struggle with, is how do you measure or put metrics to such a subjective matter, and it's so broad, like inclusion, so yeah, it would be good to see some examples out there what people are doing.
Yeah. Now this inclusion and this equity stuff, I just finished a day-long seminar on this stuff, but the thing that really hit me about it is equity is treating or equality is treating everybody the same. Equity is realizing that some people may need some more support, and so it's also is very wide-ranging. It's not only talking about, for instance, a disadvantaged group. One of the big promoters of equity recently is the AARP organization, Association of Retired People, what are we doing for seniors, or what are we doing for children? You may or may not know, but part of your taxes are earmarked to support the North Suburban Special Recreation Association. I mean, until I got on the board, I never paid any attention to that. And they've got a whole big new complex they're building up on Lake Cook Road. And they provide a lot of services to people in need. So there are a lot of things going on that we don't even know about.
And I would venture that if we brought in family services, we would learn a lot about things in Glencoe that we don't know about, that
Right.
need to be addressed.
Right.
And that is actually one of our next, I want to get in front of family services
Okay.
to talk to them about the whole process, because they would be an invaluable resource in this kind of a planning process. They know what's behind the closed doors.
What is your next step then from here? And do you need any immediate representation or assistance or help from the forum?
I think it would be very useful if you would like to participate as we go forward in meeting, like with family services and some of the other, we need to meet the school district to be a part of that, part of the process to, we're not, again, we're kind of spreading the gospel to see what happens, see who is on board and wants to take part. We need to circle back with the Plan Commission, with Bruce and his people. They're thinking about what they're going to do. And I mean, they are the Plan Commission. We are just kind of the catalyst trying to spark a fire. But we have to defer to, actually, this STF was a child of the Plan Commission a number of years ago. So we have to respect our elders.
Well, we do have relationships in our within our forum. Each forum member has a relationship with some of the people that you just mentioned, our school district and family services and everyone. So I don't see how we couldn't be involved, or at least be participating in your meetings to show some participation from the forum.
I think that would be excellent. The other
Perfect.
contact you have is with the community of faith. That is also a resource, and that we would want to very much involve in the process. I mean,
Yep.
I think
Our own
that
Reverend Gary is here.
the thing is, the whole idea is it is inclusive. The planning process is not just the Plan Commission; it's an inclusive process.
We're walking the talk.
Yeah. And the Reverend just walked away. He got a phone call.
Whenever his name gets called, he does this. We're
Okay.
used to it. Just kidding.
I don't. Are there any more questions? Or Dudley's going to provide you some additional information. I guess perhaps you would talk amongst yourselves and let us know. And Dipti, maybe you and I can touch base in the next week or so.
Sounds great. Does anyone have any other questions for the group? Margot, I thought I saw a finger up a second ago.
I thought he was giving us a thumbs up.
Oh, okay.
At least that's what I interpreted it as.
I would love to
Let's
see
take it.
a copy of the deck, if that's okay. You mentioned that you were going to be sending out some follow-up materials. It would be great to have a copy of your deck. If
Okay,
you'd be
sure.
willing to share, there was some really good information in there. So thanks for coming.
Absolutely. And actually, there's one of the things we can provide you is the full deck or the presentation materials for the Eco District organization that they use to kind of sell their program. And that's got a lot, that goes into a lot more detail. And we can get that to you too.
That would be great. And if you can just send it to, hey guys, sorry, it's my dog gets excited, starts to sing. If you can just send those to Sharon, then she can just share it with the rest of the forum.
Okay, Sharon?
Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for coming out and
Thank
and
you.
presenting. It was
Thank
a
you.
really, really good presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you all. It was excellent. And
Appreciate
thought-
the
and
time.
thought-provoking.
Have a great rest of the evening and great rest of the meeting.
Thank you.
Take care.
Take care.
All right.
Excuse me, Dipti,
yeah.
before we move on, I just wanted to mention, we had called the meeting to order at 5:03 and all members of the forum are present.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I
that's
forgot to
okay.
do that.
We are all here. We do have a quorum, so I did make note of that. And we will need to circle back to approving the meeting minutes and public comment.
Oh, shall we just go through that right now? Oh, I am so sorry. I just completely skipped over that. By now I should know it like that.
That's okay.
Yes, why don't we, so we don't have to call to order and do the roll call now, Sharon, do we?
I think we're okay. We have everyone is present here.
Okay.
On
If
record.
not, everyone say yes here and then we're good. All right, and then we just want to do the approval of the February 3rd meeting minutes. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second,
Great. Can I have a roll call vote?
Chairperson Clark,
Yes.
Member Flanagan,
Yes.
Member Gary, Reverend Gary, that is,
Yes, yes.
Member Moses,
I'm here.
Member Mizell,
Yes.
Member Rubin,
Yes.
Member Scott,
yes.
Member Valvasori,
Yes.
and Member Young.
Yes.
Great. And then are there any public comments or a member of the public would like to comment on something that is not on the agenda? Then I can ask Sharon to read any public comments that were submitted prior to the meeting. Anything that is not on the agenda.
There were no comments submitted prior to the meeting.
Okay, and would someone like to make a comment that is not on the agenda? Then please raise your hand or press *9 if you're on the phone.
I don't see any hands raised.
Okay, well, that's great. And now we have our agenda. I can't believe we missed the whole part. So that was quite an interesting presentation, and we learned quite a bit, right? I mean, I have no idea what else goes on in Glencoe, so this was actually pretty good. I think we should put this as an agenda item on our next meeting, Sharon, to take some time to discuss this because we may not have enough time today.
Certainly, and I would agree. We have a very full agenda this evening.
So that's okay with the rest of the forum members. We'll talk about this in our next meeting. I hope you've made good notes, so it'll all come back. So we wanted to touch base on our meeting tomorrow with the board, as they have invited us, and Sharon shared the presentation that we would be using. I just want to take some quick time to go through it, make sure everyone's okay with it, have the presenters say, yes, I'm presenting, how much time they'd like. I mean, just kind of scrub it a little bit, formalize it, and then boom, we're done. So Sharon, if you don't mind sharing that on your screen.
It'll just take me a moment. I don't have it up in front of me.
Oh, here, I'll share it then. I think I have the version. All right, can you see my screen, everyone? All right, can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Perfect. So This is our agenda that, again, the time next to it is very, it's not exact. However, given some extra time in case if people have questions, introductions will probably take 10 minutes, but for the rest of those, it may not take 5 minutes per initiative, for example. You may just take maybe a couple minutes to talk through the initiative, but in case if people have questions as you're talking through them, we've just put in some extra time just as padding. So is this agenda good with everyone? Does anyone have any questions, changes?
Dipti, I was just curious, say, for example, with introductions, is everybody gonna say what's on the screen, or are we just, I mean, what are you thinking there since the bullets are there,
All right, here we go. So when Sharon clicks next to go to through introductions, I will speak for myself. Maureen will speak for herself. Gary will speak for himself.
Okay, so we should just say what's on the screen, more or less.
I mean, you can just speak. I mean, I put down what you sent me, right? So you could, it's your introduction. I would say, you introduce yourself and this will just come up on the screen as it's just something that's brief of whatever you want to say. So we'll just go through everybody's introductions. As you can see, Gary doesn't have much. He just says someone you already know. So I don't know. That's what he's going to say. I'm someone you already know. Sorry, Gary. I'm in a playful
In
mood.
fairness, if I have to introduce myself to the Board of Trustees, I'm in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, true. So we'll just go through everyone's introductions. So we've given it about 10 minutes, a minute and a half or a minute per person. We may not need that much time or we may, so it all depends. So it's just the order just comes in for, Anise, you're just last because you're the newest member. That's the only reason you're the last one on this list, but that's just how we've just put it through in order. So Amy, does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so once we go through the introductions, I will briefly touch on our mission and our goals that we have already defined, and we've really talked about it several times. So this will be quick, again, giving it a couple more minutes in case if there are questions. So I know you guys have already seen this presentation, so if you don't have any changes or anything, I can quickly go through it. So any questions for the mission or the goals? Okay. So I thought it would be interesting to put in a little bit about what we've been doing and putting some positivity out there for what the forum has been engaged in so far and some of our success stories, which is why this slide is there. And I'm thinking you guys have already looked at it. And, feel free to add to it if something's been missed. So this is the opportunity, for us to kind of finalize this. So let me know if there is anything that we should, or Sharon, know if there's anything we should include that is probably missed out of here. Silence is good. I can't see anyone's faces, so if anyone's doing thumbs up or anything, I wouldn't know. If you need some more time to go through it, let me know. Otherwise, are we good with it?
I think so.
Yeah. Okay. So that would then take us into talking about initiatives. So again, I've put in just bullet points because I'm guessing you guys want to talk through it. Take the time you would need to go through it. I mean, everybody has 5 minutes, but again, my guess is you're not going to take 5 minutes. You're probably going to take a couple minutes and then there might be a dialogue or questions. I hope there is actually dialogue and questions. So from Hillary, Amy, and Margot, have you guys decided who's going to present?
I thought Hillary was, but we should confirm. Hillary, I don't know if you were or if not. What do you think?
Sorry, I was trying to find myself to unmute. Yeah, I'm happy to present. Deputy, can we still add any updates here? I would just, so my concern is just that everything we have to say is already on this slide, and I'm a little averse to just reading off the slide. So do you mind if we just, if I send you just a quick,
Karen, is it too late or can we still make changes? Has this already gone out to the board?
You can still make changes. I would ask that you get them to me early in the morning tomorrow if possible. We are anticipating sending the presentation to the board in advance, just because there is quite a bit of information to give them some extra time with it. If there are some kind of late additions, that's certainly okay.
and yeah, I just want to look it over sort of in this context. I would get back to you this evening, so you would have it first thing.
Perfect.
That's perfect. Thanks, Hillary.
Thank you. All right, so this would be Hillary. And a couple minutes is good, Hillary, for you to speak through this?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. All right. And then I'm sure, like, you know, if your team members want to chime in with you, I'm sure they would. It's fairly casual. The next initiative is getting to know the heart of Glencoe. That's again, Maureen, Gary, and Anise. And do we have a presenter from your group?
Yes, Anise.
Anise.
That's by default. But yeah, it's me.
So Anise, you're good with the slide and you can just speak to it and you can just, you know, again, a couple minutes. Is that good time for you to take on this?
Yeah, I can't imagine talking more than a couple minutes.
Okay.
It's
All right.
fine.
All right. So that's kind of what we're shooting for, but just be prepared for like questions or a dialogue if that comes up from here. Again, you know, I would encourage the whole subcommittee to be engaged. And then we've got Reverend Gary, who's going to present the town hall series. So Reverend Gary, you're okay with a couple minutes speaking to this?
As a preacher, I need more than a couple minutes. No, that's good. No, that's fine.
Wait a second.
That's
what are you
fine.
going to preach? I was thinking we haven't talked about this. Don't surprise me there.
I've heard him preach. Whatever he wants, let him go.
I'm telling you, he's fantastic.
Thank
it's almost
you,
like he
Gary.
reads your mind. He reads your mind and it's like, oh, how did he know that that's what I was thinking today? So very interesting. All right, so we've got Reverend Gary presenting here for this initiative. And then we have two questions that we have listed to ask the village board. However, my guess is we're going to get a lot more questions back from them. We could have two of our forum members initiate these questions. Do we have any volunteers? My goodness, anybody volunteering? I can't see.
Dipty, I'm not sure what
Maybe
you
as a
mean.
smooth transition, I can do it to lead the first question because
Okay.
I'll be speaking from the
For the last
other.
slide. Okay, that sounds good. That's a good idea. Anybody wants to take the next question?
What do you mean by, I apologize, what do you mean by take the next question? I mean, I thought
As
it
in,
was
like,
sort of the questions thrown out to the
Ask.
board and
Ask the
we're
question.
looking for responses.
Yes, but somebody has to ask the question.
It'll be in writing in front of them on the screen, won't it?
Yeah, it's always
Okay.
nice to verbally ask it, right?
All right. Okay. I'm just, you know, it's a Zoom awkwardness. I'm not sure what we
I
were
know, but
intending.
that's why, you know, like it takes away some of the formality of it written down on a slide when first of all, when someone speaks, it sounds so much nicer than what's written. Especially if Reverend Gary speaks, then,
Okay.
you know, Reverend Gary, you're welcome to take both the questions if we don't have another volunteer.
If I
Well,
may,
I'll do it as like a general thing, staying, I know, next slide, then the questions come up and just general say the questions without saying actual words, and then have them respond to those two questions.
Yeah, because
That's,
my guess is, knowing the board, there will be people that want to respond. And I think hopefully what will happen is a conversation will actually occur.
That would be really nice. That's what we're really actually hoping to have, is
That's-
just a conversation.
Yeah, that's the
So-
nature of the format, and it's to try to encourage that. If we were all in person, we'd be in a big room around a big table for just that purpose. And we're trying to duplicate it as best we can with Zoom. But I will tell you that it is an informal, open conversation where people can, interrupt if they have a thought or a question or something. So
That's great.
I would encourage everyone to do so.
Okay, that's good to know, and that's what we look for from Gary, since he is in both rooms. So I'm sure he knows how things operate
Deputy
there.
Margot's got her hand up. I don't know if you can see.
I can't see. I'm sorry. When I'm sharing, I can only see like 3 people. Yes,
Yeah, I
Marco.
did have a question. The makeup of the board. How many new trustees will we be adding, and when will they be added? And do those new members have, and I have no idea what the caucus process was, will they have any impact on the board's position? I mean, I assume they're not going to say, never mind, we don't want you to do this, but are we missing out on any potentially good information or input by presenting to a board that is having some members leave and new ones come in?
Well, Dudley is going to be joining the board, and you just chatted with him. And trust me, I've spoken with him before, and I believe he's very supportive of our mission generally. We'll undoubtedly be dialoguing with him, I hate to use that term, but we'll be speaking with him about what they're trying to do on sustainability, et cetera. So I think that will be a natural. So I don't think there'll be any kind of major shift. I would be very.
My biggest question is, will the new members of the board have some opinions on what the board would be willing to add to our sort of agenda?
Well, it's always possible, but we won't know until they're there. I mean, for example, Larry is done at the end of this term. And right now, the only candidate on the ballot is Howard. So I haven't had any long conversations with him about our work in particular. But again, I think you'll find a very receptive person there in terms of the mission, and things don't stop because we're waiting for transition a couple of months from now. We should just move ahead and make progress.
Not concerned with stopping. I'm looking for more gusto. I mean, not that we haven't gotten a lot of gusto, but even more would be awesome.
All right. So that's our presentation. In the appendix, I put in commonly used terms. We use it. And I know Gary and I went back and forth a little bit about the diversity. Oops, sorry. That is not what I wanted to happen. Oh, come on. There we go. But I just thought it would be nice to kind of, because these are terms that now we're going to start using more and more often. So just wanted to kind of, have that out there. It's an appendix, not going to be, really talked through during the meeting. However, it's just there for people to read. And so I know that Gary, we're still working through that one little piece.
Yeah, the definition of diversity, I sent you and Sharon a suggestion for how that might be revised.
I'm totally fine with it, Sharon. If you want to just replace it, I'm totally fine with it if you are.
It's certainly this group's call. I think, again, as Dipti had mentioned, it's good to reiterate that the definitions are going to be just an appendix as needed to refer to, not a planned portion of the presentation. The board and the forum spent quite a bit of time on definitions in the fall when we had our training with Erica Walker. And so really the crux of the presentation is on the work of the forum and the future work of the forum. So happy to update the definition if that's the preference of the group.
And essentially, just so the folks know, my slight change, if you will, I mean, it's a bit different rather than, it just spoke to the emphasis was on the fact of that there are diversity, meaning that there are people that have different characteristics as opposed to the characteristics themselves. It's literally just, it's referencing the fact that diversity is a noun, and it's a range of having, it goes on to talk, I wrote something about including people of, and again, I took language from our welcoming statement, frankly, in terms of referencing various and sundry different underrepresented groups. So maybe Sharon, you could circulate that to everybody and people could just email back to Sharon if they have any objection.
Sure, be happy to.
Thank you. I want to be very cognizant of the Open Meeting Act.
Sure.
Stuff.
Always good
with
to do
emails.
that. Always good to do that. Good tip. One logistics note that I'll share related to the meeting tomorrow night. It is somewhat time limited in the sense that we're meeting with the board and the committee of the whole meeting, which begins at 5:30. The village board will then have its regular village board meeting at 7. So the committee of the whole typically tries to wrap up by 7 o'clock in order to start the board meeting at 7. So we're kind of eyeballing about an hour for this portion of the discussion at the committee of the whole meeting. There is another agenda item following this, which is perhaps somewhat related as a bit of an outgrowth of this conversation, which is a question of the board as to whether they would like to review and potentially update the village's human relations ordinance to further articulate the village's values and public policies that prohibit discrimination and stand against discrimination and bias in any form. And also to a bit of a code cleanup that's more technical in nature to move where the creation of the community relations forum is codified, just to be a bit more consistent. That's honestly more of a housekeeping change and probably less interesting because it's not substantive. That is not an item that will be presented by the forum. So breathe a sigh of relief. You don't have 2 things that you are responsible for presenting. I will present that item as the assistant village manager with that hat on. And the staff recommendation is that should the village board wish to review the ordinance, that we would recommend that the community relations forum provide input on a draft revision of the ordinance in the future. That's very consistent with the forum's role as an advisory body to the village board. So that is the second item that will follow. If you'd like to stick around for that, you're most welcome. If you'd like to stick around for the full board meeting, you're very welcome to stick around for that too. It's certainly your preference.
It's great. I think we can stay in that time frame. I don't think we have, I mean, it depends on the dialogue and how much we have back and forth, but I think in general, what we're presenting, we should be able to stay in the time frame. So let's just be cognizant of that time. Any other questions for tomorrow? Do we have a color-coded scheme? We're all going to wear a certain color?
You certainly don't have to do that.
It's a joke. Personally, my favorite color is red, but I can go blue or white or pink. All right, do we have anything else to discuss?
For the meeting, we had two other items on the agenda. We had the communications exercise and we had discussion regarding foreign marketing initiatives, which I don't know what order we'd like to take those. If you'd like to perhaps table the marketing initiatives discussion to our next meeting. I know we had carried over the communications exercise from the last meeting.
If we don't have time to do it, it's okay. I mean, I don't want to have people hang on longer. I don't want people to feel like it's something that they, that we're rushing to do. I want to be respectful of people's time.
What do we have planned for next for our March meeting, our first March meeting, Sharon? Then maybe we can decide if we have time to move these to that, and then because we've had a long meeting already, so I want to try to keep it to an hour 15 usually. So if we have less to discuss in the next meeting, we could push these.
The only identified item that we have is the follow-up from tonight's presentation from the Sustainability Task Force. So some continued discussion on that. Should the board make a recommendation to review the Human Relations Ordinance, I don't know what the time frame of that might look like as to whether that's something we would begin talking about in March. Again, I think some of that'll be contingent on the board's discussion tomorrow evening. But I think that's about it as far as what we had formally scheduled out.
Plus our regular items of just giving updates if there are any on our on our initiatives and with our organizations, and possibly our next speakers and who we're inviting in our upcoming meetings. I'm okay to push it to the next meeting if everyone else needs some time now to get back to their evening. Yay? Nay? Okay.
So for March, we don't have any scheduled presentations for the first of the two meeting dates. So we would only be meeting the second. Is that how we're doing it?
Well, Hillary's working on getting us a confirmation from, we talked about last meeting, this young lady.
Celia Buckman.
Right.
You have to remind me her name.
Celia Buckman.
Yes, Celia Buckman, who could possibly come and speak to us about her research about Glencoe. We don't have a confirmation yet, do we, Hillary?
Not as of this moment, but I will follow up.
And if she is not able to attend this time, then we may be also reaching out to our possibly Family Services of Glencoe.
That's correct.
And, if you guys want to add something else to the list, please feel free to do that because we want to keep our list rolling. So we have our attendees lined up for every month. So Marco, if you have anybody in mind, let's just get that on our list. Start to schedule them out, whether it's April or May. All right, sounds like a plan. So we're okay to, oh wait, we have to do the comments. I don't want to forget the comments this time. Do we have any public comments for items that were on the agenda, either in email or from the attendees?
There were no comments submitted by email and I don't see any hands raised.
Okay. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Somebody's in a hurry. All right, guys, have a, oh,
Wait,
may I have
Wait, we need a vote.
We need
Yes,
to call
yes,
vote.
yes, I
We need to
remember.
vote.
Speaking of in a hurry.
May I please have a roll call vote?
Chairperson Clark,
Yes.
member Flanagan,
Yes.
member Reverend Gary,
Yes.
member Moses,
Yes.
member Rubin,
Yes.
member Scott,
Yes.
member Valvasori,
Yes.
member Mizell. Sorry, I went out of order. That looked like a yes from Amy.
Yeah.
Yes, okay. Member, I said Valvasori already. Yep, member Young.
Yes.
Okay, then we stand adjourned. Have a lovely
Great.
evening.
Thanks, everyone. Good
Everyone,
night.
have a great evening. Bye.
Thank you. Good night.